should pursue an MBA, and what would be your avenues after that, and why did you stick to service design?
How are you essentially addressing this pain point that you're currently facing when you're using the business model
Started
tenets?
implementing a series of service design methodologies. We began to realize that it did not work.
Hey guys, I'm Junaiza Niazi, author of Navigating Service Design, and joining me is the incredible Sharan Longani, an aspiring service designer. And together, we're on a mission to connect you with the brightest minds practicing service design. In today's musing, we have Siddhartha Saxena, practicing service design in Frankfurt, Germany. He works in the realm of business design and organizational change management. As a part of Iconstorm, a strategic design agency based out of Germany, his primary work is developing tools and methodologies that could help businesses in decision making for their marketing strategy and change management within their organizations. Thank you, Siddharth, for joining us.
Thank you for having me here, Janeza and Sharon.
So, Siddharth, before we get into the serious topics, Sharon and I really want to know, did you have clarity that you wanted to pursue service design from the beginning?
Well, honestly, no. So I come from an architecture background, but then when I kind of started reading more about design to business transition and design for business, then I came across service design as an upcoming field, and I read a lot of blogs about it, talked to people on LinkedIn and other social media platforms, and that got me really hooked to this field, and it helped me make up my mind about it.
I resonate a lot with your journey because mine's been so similar. Like, as a designer, when I entered the industry, because in design school it's so much about design and product detailing and everything, right? We completely miss out on the business aspects of things. Like, in school you are sort of pitching your designs to other sets of designers. They aren't asking the questions that you would be asked in an industry setting where your audience is completely different and very business centric, and it's all about data, numbers, and what are you selling at the end of the day. So I feel seen by your experience, and I have had the same dilemmas about whether to do an MBA or how to proceed, and that's also how I discovered service design. So I wanted to ask you, when you were in that dilemma whether you should pursue an MBA, and what would be your avenues after that, and why did you stick to service design and decide to do like a service design centric course, is also like what I wanted to come to and understand.
Now, of course, at that time, I mean, I did not have a deep knowledge of either of the two. But of course, service design felt more familiar because of a lot of terminologies that they
Right.
use, and in a lot of writing that I came across at that time, things felt really understandable. While MBA being the grand field that it has been for quite a while, and it's a very established subject, the terminology was very alien to me as a designer, right? And so I was also thinking that how could I make use of my previous skill sets in some way during the course or even after that if possible. And with MBA I kind of saw this less as a chance, and of course I was looking at it from the naive point of view of a student, of course, or a starter in this course. So that's what brought me closer to service design. And then secondly, there was another aspect which I realized a bit later, was that a lot of things in or a lot of are very theory heavy, right? They are deep rooted concepts from the business world, right? They are complex, if I have to simply put it, right? And but if I look into service design, it has this aspect of looking into possible scenarios, into storytelling, into the concept of futures, and that really attracted me. um which made me more confident about this choice eventually.
Did you have exposure to, like, later in your course, did you have exposure to people who did MBA, and did you have an opportunity to see what you might have learned or what you might not have learned if you had taken an MBA over a service design
As
course?
a matter of fact, yes. So what happens? So I am I did my course at Politecnico di Milano, and there, like, my course is called PSSD, or Product Service Systems Design, and they have their own business vertical called MIP, which has courses in bachelor's and master's and in business administration, and then of course there is an entire PhD section running in it. And they had exchange students coming to take certain of our courses, while some of our students would go to the business school in the second half of that course. And so while working with them, I kind of came to a realization that now people coming from the MBA course, they have great understanding about microeconomics, about finance concepts, about human resource management, etc. Right? But they look at more of an evidence based decision making approach, right? Which means that they rely on existing data to realize projected futures, while in from a designer's point of view, we are looking at unlikely futures. We are looking at things that would be best if they could happen, that they have to be the preferred futures and not the probable ones, right? The story that I would want to tell, and how do you reach there, right? And that is something which I feel that it complements their capabilities, because I feel that in the real world both are equally important. One drives towards efficiency and the other drives towards innovation, and that's why I think it really complements with the current business studies, at least the way it was taught in Polytechnic.
So collaboration is a key skill for service designers, irrespective, because it seems like we can't know it all. So we have to work very closely with other stakeholders in the system in order to deliver the most effective or impactful outcome, right? So around that topic, there was this excerpt in my book that I wanted to read out for you. It says, often each department is focused on the task at hand, unable to realize that the success of their effort depends directly or indirectly on another department's performance. And we fail to understand that a customer does not view an inconvenience as a department's fault, but a company's inability to address it. And like you rightly said, a service designer plays a critical role in connecting multiple departments and articulating the interdependencies. Do you want to elaborate how important this role that we're playing is? And do you feel like this is a very important role?
Oh yeah, absolutely. But first of all, I should. I'm really thankful that you wrote this book. It was a really great and eye-opening read as a student of this subject,
Thank you
and
so much.
thankfully it guided me a lot in my journey, especially in the later years.
Thank you. Thank you
But
so much.
if you look at it at a much larger perspective, even outside of the company, and when I'm saying that, like, look at it from a systems theory lens, right? How do you look at the entire market space? So just as in a company you have all these departments that are collectively responsible to fulfill the demands of its customers, in a market system as well, in today's services, which are made by a lot of different business entities collaborating together, that entire ecosystem of companies is responsible for the outcomes of that service, its successes and failures, and also how the different types of target audience sees and demands from the providers of it, right? And that's where collaboration becomes extremely necessary.
what is collaboration? It sounds
Abs-
like a simple term, but can you elaborate what is collaboration according to you?
Absolutely. So let me show you something. In the market space, what are the things that we are talking about? There are service actors, or basically business entities, user and consumer groups, suppliers, vendors, different types of let's say lobbies and influential groups, so to say, right? We treat them all as actors, right, whose actions influence the outcomes. Then there are resources, or things like raw material, human resource, skill sets, and now in today's world, data, right? And then there are things which are known as institutional logics, or the traditions or norms in a society, in the influence of which these markets work. And here these actor collectives, basically, they interact with these resources and create what we known as service ecosystems, which contain a lot of different services and lead to a different set of offerings. For example, banking is a service ecosystem, right? Insurance is a similar ecosystem. Healthcare is an ecosystem. So what is happening here is that they all, under certain contexts, deliver services or service offerings when seen from a company lens, right? Now, why is it necessary, if you ask me? One of the most important aspects it adds to a service ecosystem is that of resilience, right? How can we ensure the service ecosystem's longevity in time for its target group or for its target market? Then there is the concept of relevance. How relevant or how useful are your offerings, for your target audience, or for your key customer groups? And then what is the possibility of innovation, right? Because the market situation keeps on changing, the customer keeps on evolving, and you should be able to innovate to effectively match them. And that can only be done through collaboration.
Right, right. But it's a very obvious understanding that collaboration is extremely important for companies. But why do you think companies continue to struggle and continue to face challenges while collaborating, despite knowing that that's the only way to ensure that there is innovation, resilience, and relevance to the service that they're offering the market?
From my understanding, and like, I have been reading and writing about it. I did my thesis on this topic because uh, since it is a key topic, how do you infuse collaboration into business ecosystems? And that was also my big question, that they have been in existence for eternity, basically from the very start of human civilization, where exchange or transaction started to happen. But why is it so difficult for a lot of business entities to collaborate? And the big insight which I received after doing a lot of reading and taking a lot of interviews was that right now the preferred way to measure collaboration for companies is through assessing their supply chain efficiency, or rather we should say value chain efficiency, right? How effectively, or rather how efficiently they create value for its customers, right? And that's why they are called value oriented businesses. And one of the very successful methods up till now, which have been in use to model businesses or to develop businesses, is the Osterwalder's business model canvas. Um, Now, it comes with a lot of positives. It's a very simplified canvas. It is easy to work with in a lot of circumstances, and it really simplifies a complex structure of a business into essentially these 9 parts, right? You have the side of the doer or the provider, you have the other side of the consumer, and then you have consequences, and they all revolve around values. But it has its own limitations as well. That's what I began to understand when I went deeper into researching it. You see, the biggest issue is that it demonstrates the business partners as a unified entity, um, and the customers, on the other hand, as a separate entity. Now, this implies that they cannot be intermixed in this conventional model. And it also implies that the value is created through an exchange between them. But if we look into the concepts from service design and service dominant logic, we are looking at the fact that value is always highly contextual. It is derived from the situation in which the transaction happens. For example, if you think about a cafe, and you take that as a service business, the transaction happening there is only the exchange of uh, uh, tailor-made coffee products between the customer and the barista, right? Right. But the moment you look at the context and its value in that context, there comes a lot of these concepts, such as whether coffee is acceptable as a beverage in that society, who is it for, when it is supposed to be had or consumed, and how, right? Different cultures have different ways of consuming coffee as a beverage. They have different levels of significance and economic criteria as to who gets to have coffee, right? Or who could afford it, right? Or how important is it to which type of customer group. So a lot of context gets added to it, and that changes the type of value.
Just reiterating, so you're saying that with the business model canvas, the only value proposition that we could arrive at is whatever is being used as an exchange. So it's generally a commodity, versus it is not able to capture other possible value propositions based on other contextual variables.
Yes, I would like to add also, it could also be an experience, because as I said, the experience of sitting in a restaurant or in a cafe space is also a value proposition, but it can never be a universal experience.
Sorry, so you're saying that the experience as a value proposition is not going to be captured on a business model canvas, is it?
It can be, its context cannot be captured very easily.
What are the different missing levers that the business model canvas is unable to capture?
Essentially, the institutional logics, as I mentioned earlier, or the socio-cultural norms, the traditions in which that particular experience works, right? And many other little details.
Okay, so this pain point that you have identified, where the business model canvas is limiting the service proposition for a company or a business, how are you working around it? Like, how are you essentially addressing this pain point that you're currently facing when you're using the business model canvas?
Here at Iconstorm, we have been trying to address this gap which exists in not only the Osterwilder's canvas, but also other related business modeling activities or processes. And we are trying to create our own version of this canvas, of course, based on a lot of research. Like, I can give you an example of a project that we are working on, which is using this canvas right now in its business development. It's a 4.5 year long project that we have been working on, and it's still going on, right? And it basically involves a lot of different stakeholders. So what is this thing? The German government at one point realized that uh, a lot of patients in the country or in general who have a hearing aid disability, right, are also prone to be patients of cardiology in future. And there is an 80% correlation, which is a huge number for the medical community, right? So they began to work on this concept that how do we create a monitoring system or a telemedicine system that could help monitor these patients in the long term. And from that was born this project called the Augmented Auditive Intelligence, or A2I for short, where what we are looking at is that how can telemedicine centers in this country remotely monitor a series of patients who have enrolled into audiological treatment programs, and they could eventually predict when a person is susceptible to a heart malfunction, so to say, right? And then of course there is the whole concept of how do you relay this information to that person, how do you continuously involve them in the clinical mechanism, and how do you prevent a cardiovascular collapse if there has to happen one, right? And a system like this has, as I said, a lot of different stakeholders, which included hospital departments ranging from cardiology to audiology and everything in between, all the support units. Of course, it required different types of hospital administrations, local doctors, general practitioners, specialists on one side to collaborate with companies that make these medical instruments or are handling medical data. And then of course there were a series of regulatory authorities in not only in Germany but at the EU level, basically look at the handling of this data, right? And this makes it a really complex story because they are all supposed to be woven into a common goal setting, where they were supposed to have basically these four major objectives, right? There has to be remote caregiving, AI based clinical decision making, and etc., right? And when we started working on this project, we looked at it from the conventional business modeling perspective, which is value in exchange, right? But what it led us to believe, and of course there were three different research institutes working on it, and we were the design consultants working on the service blueprint of it. We came to believe that maybe the product owner, or the service ownership must lie with the entity which is called the telemedicine center, right? And that is something that we wanted to understand and get deeper, because a service so complex might not be possibly handled by an entity of this capacity. So we started implementing a series of service design methodologies, and we began to realize that it did not work the way we were expecting it to work. So we began to rethink our approach. We dived deeper into the resource integration mechanism, and we began to then infuse it into our value co-creation, the typical realm of the provider versus the realm of the customer. And then we decided to develop it into a canvas format, or a tool for iteration, right? Of course, then it was formally worked upon. We divided it into segments which are very similar to the business model canvas, but they bring in certain new levels of hierarchization or prioritization, and a new mechanism of using it, or a new method for how it can be used in an iterative brainstorming workshop. And that's what gave rise to the current structure of this tool, which we call as the provider model canvas, or looking at the lens from a service provider's perspective.
So this canvas was built from your experience with working in this for this particular product or solution. Like, it was the canvas the outcome of this particular methodology that you were following and discovering where the limitation is, and then you arrived at this canvas, or did you already have this canvas with you and you decided we need to use this?
No. We designed this canvas during this project. It was designed because before, at least before before last couple of years, this iteration of the business modeling mechanism did not exist as far as our team knows, right? And we developed it from scratch just because the results that we were getting out of the business model canvas were not applicable enough. They did not cover all the different possibilities that emerged from an ecosystem like this.
Can you elaborate how the provider model canvas is solving the initial pain point that we were discussing, which is collaboration?
Because when we started working with this canvas, as opposed to the business model, where we elaborated upon who does what and who is important for what kind of activity in the system, we found that if we are talking about the concept of remote caregiving, there is a certain hierarchy or order of stakeholders. Just look at the whole canvas. You have stakeholders which are in circles. These are the business entities. You have the activities which are in triangles, and you have the resources which are in squares, right? And below and above you have of course values and outcomes of the system. Current state of the canvas as we see it is for one objective, which in this case is remote caregiving. The moment you switch the objective, these positions have to change, right? Because I'll give you an example. For remote caregiving, your key stakeholder could be the nurses and doctors who are providing the care, and then all the others would be support stakeholders, right? So similarly, medical activities would be more prominent, and other support activities such as data handling would be secondary and tertiary. But in an objective like AI based clinical decision making, data handling and data decipheration becomes the key activity, and so all those stakeholders which are involved in that aspect suddenly come to the center, right? And others become support actors, and so the corresponding resources and the corresponding service artifacts change levels of importance. And we try to make it into an iterative workshop where people can look at these different activities, and they can move these stakeholders, they can move these activities, and look at what kind of consequences they arrive on. What in this project, what it helped us with was look at our stakeholders and their activities very differently. Earlier, in a typical business model canvas, you would have categorized them based on their type of involvement, right? Medical practitioners, data handlers, manufacturing companies, so on and so forth, right? But the moment you look at it from this canvas's perspective, you are looking at it from different stakeholders' own lens, as if they are the heroes of their story, and how the rest of the ecosystem revolves around them, right? And this then makes a lot of things clear for them. This makes them understand what is their exact position in delivering that service offering, and at what time their involvement becomes necessary, right? And this is one of the big achievements that we found through this canvas, which our participants began to realize.
With the business model canvas, the outcome that you arrived at for the remote caregiving was that the telemedicine team was solely responsible for the remote caregiving, right? What is the outcome that you arrived at with the provider model canvas?
What we began to finally conclude was that the telemedicine center alone cannot take care of all these objectives. These four objectives will actually be shared into these groups of entities. So a telemedicine center can only take care of two related data handling activities, while remote caregiving, which was seen earlier as the most important outcome, would actually be handled by certain hospital departments, which would act as dispatch centers for these telemedicine centers, where actually the nurses and doctors would sit and would continuously monitor this data and provide constant care support, internet or by direct connection with the patient.
Interesting. So it's almost like with the provider model canvas, there is a lot more ownership that you're able to essentially make visible across different teams, and it's a shared ownership and not a specific team that is solely responsible for success of a particular vertical, right? I think with the provider model canvas, that's becoming more evident and more visual for companies.
Yes, absolutely, because it is helping you as a stakeholder, it is helping you clarify your role. Because imagine it to be like an orchestra, as you even say that in the book. For the final outcome of the orchestra or the symphony, each each element of that orchestra is important, but they are important in different times and rhythms and at different positions in a larger sequence, right? And until they are made clear of that, they might move in an uncontrolled way, and it would be really difficult to orchestrate them. I had talked about the fact that collaboration contains these or answers to these three key questions: resilience, relevance, and innovation. So, what do we add with this canvas to these three questions? We are adding, in case of resilience, we are adding the concept of visibility, right? On this canvas, you can make things visible, that what entities exist around you in your stakeholder or in your ecosystem, which can act as a potential stakeholder or as an actor to your. We are also helping you prioritize or hierarchize the actions of different stakeholders, just like creating the plan of a symphony in an orchestra, right? And then we are providing you with an opportunity to reveal underlying information or possible connections so that you can innovate as well.
Seems like this provider model canvas could be so useful for especially big companies, remote companies, etc. So what is the future of this model? Is it something that anyone can easily access and use, or how are you guys thinking that what is the future of this model?
See, ultimately, it will. We are planning to publish it as a credible methodology, and what we are also currently working on is building a workshop mechanism around it, which is easily understandable, which can be done by everybody from student groups to small and large businesses. Coming back to what it is currently leading to, right now we are carrying out a lot of tests, and we're getting a lot of positive feedback regarding it, because it is some way people are recognizing that it is revealing this kind of information to them and giving this possibility to play with the canvas rather than having it as a static deliverable. So we are planning to take it forward as a formidable method for business modeling.
Oh, that's absolutely lovely to hear that you guys are testing out this canvas pretty rigorously. And thank you so much for sharing this methodology with us. And I really hope this is something that is accessible for all of us in the future. And yeah, I think it would be a very interesting way to see how we can talk about collaboration in a very visual sense, because collaboration is more of a feeling and it's very difficult to lay it out on paper as to why we need to collaborate. Very few of us have visibility because we get to see the entire ecosystem, but people working in specific teams or in silos, a methodology like this would help more people visualize why is it important for them to collaborate so that their project or their outcome is successful. So thank you so much for sharing this methodology with us, and I really hope you guys are successful in this.
Well, thank you for your best wishes, and thank you for giving me the time and stage to bring this out. And I know it's a very dry aspect, but for us in business design, it is extremely essential to understand this level of detail. And I'm really hoping that this work of ours could bring something valuable to the world of business design and service design at large.